Week 15 is just around the corner, and you know what that means? It's prediction day again. Like with Week 14, there's a lot to look forward to as we get 12 matches total. Not to mention that every team in the league is going to play at least once. It's also worth mentioning that this is the last week before the regular season tournament happens, so some of the outcomes could play a major factor in deciding the seeding. Let's take a look at what this week has in store for us. Starting with the hero bans, this time around there will be no Orisa, Moira, Mei, or Tracer. Like with the previous week, these are some pretty impactful bans. No Orisa means Bunker's completely off the table. No Mei means we won't get the complete standard comp from early in the season with McCree, Ryan, Diva, etc. With Moira gone, it'll be difficult to run a full-on Deathball comp, and it may even discourage people from trying Doomfist and other super brawly characters. Then with Tracer, while her being gone isn't the end of the world, it's still going to be interesting to see how well these teams adjust who have been relying on her a lot as of late. In terms of what this hero pool means for the meta, well, I'm not entirely sure. I'm fairly certain I know what we won't see, but what we will see is a bit harder to get a grasp on. There's a wide range of possibilities. Maybe we go back to Dive with Brig Zen, or maybe teams get up close and personal with Reinhardt Zarya. I'm expecting to see a lot of different stuff be played since so many heroes could be considered viable. This is one of those weeks where I'm not going to be looking too much into the meta. Well, those are my overall thoughts on this week's hero pool, so without wasting any more time, let's start off with the matches. Okay, to kick off the festivities on Saturday, the rejuvenated Seoul Dynasty play the Chengdu Hunters. While I don't know how likely it is because he's on a new team, there is a chance we might end up seeing the newly acquired Slime in action. If he does end up making an appearance, it'll be interesting to see what type of impact he has. Looking at the game as a whole, after beating the almighty Shanghai Dragons, the Dynasty probably feel at the top of the world in terms of their confidence. Add in the fact that the Hunters are looking pretty lost, and this seems like a great opportunity for Seoul to make one final push with their tournament positioning. I expect them to win this, I'll be honest. The Hunters may have a chaotic style, but the Dynasty like to play patiently. Through their stronger discipline, I am expecting the Dynasty to win the set 3-1. I will say though, this kind of feels like a trap game. The Hunters are long overdue for a win, and Seoul might come in feeling overconfident. Either that, or maybe Seoul struggles with Echo if she's viable again or something like that. Regardless, the Dynasty, I think, should win. Keyword should. I lack confidence in Chengdu right now more than anything though. I do not trust them to pull off an upset in their current state. The follow-up game to the opener will be between the Dragons and Spitfire. Each of these teams had pretty eventful weekends. London proved to me that they could end up being a sleeper pick in the Asian tournament, while Shanghai showed that they are indeed vulnerable to the rest of the Asian region. But with London struggling to beat the Guangzhou charge, it goes without saying that Shanghai is in far better shape. Sure, they slipped up against Seoul, but it's not like they got dominated or anything like that. It was very close. If London can't beat a team that the Dragons 3-0 on their sleep, it's difficult to imagine them pulling off this upset. Generally speaking, the Dragons are further ahead of a young London team that is still developing. The Spitfire do have great potential, and I do think they could become a force in the Asian region one day, but as it currently stands, they aren't quite at that level. Shanghai is more talented and well-rounded. When you watch the Dragons play, it truly does feel like a total team effort. London, on the other hand, seems to depend a tiny bit more on individual performances. Based off how I'm talking, it goes without saying that I'm taking the Dragons, and I'll say they win 3-0 without too many issues. The Spitfire aren't ready for this type of powerhouse yet, and I expect that to be reflected upon by the final result. As a quick note, I'll be watching the Lip versus Glister matchup if it does indeed happen. These two are in contention for the best rookie hits game player if you don't include Xe, so I'd love to see which one of these two is better. To conclude day one of the Asian region games, we've got the NYXL taking on the Hangzhou Spark. This is a weird one to me. Both of these teams are coming off bad weeks, so it almost feels as if anything is going to be possible here. The Spark simply got dominated by Shanghai again, while New York tried playing some weird stuff that ultimately ended up backfiring in a loss against the Charge. Historically though, the NYXL tend to bounce back from these bad losses. Meanwhile, the Spark are pretty inconsistent with winning potential bounce back games, so I'm definitely leaning towards New York. Something to look out for, though, is the fact that New York can't put Sabiobi on Tracer this week, so maybe the Spark can take advantage of this. Another factor that could lead to them winning this is the main tank battle. This is my personal individual matchup to look out for. Mono versus Gushwei. Two role stars at the main tank position going head to head. Each of them are extremely talented on the Winston and Reinhardt, so my guess is whoever is more reliable will be the victor. The guy to hit the bigger shatters and the guy who does a better job of allowing for his healers to keep him up will be the one to win. But in the end, this in my opinion will be an uphill battle for the Spark no matter what. I have the NYXL winning the series 3-1. Unless the NYXL go crazy with substitutions again or play some wacky comps, this is their game to win. They should be favored. They are simply better in my opinion. I'm especially confident in Jonek and Mono to have a great game. Jonek is more consistent than somebody like Bebe without a doubt, and Mono never fails to rise up to the occasion against a fellow star at his position. Moving on to the next game now, we've got the Houston Outlaws versus the Vancouver Titans. The new look Titan squad has yet another busy week ahead of them, and it seems to be following the same type of pattern where their Saturday match could be interesting, but you don't expect much from them on Sunday. While I'm not guaranteeing anything, Houston seems like an opponent they might be able to at least kind of hang in there with. It all really depends on how much progress they can make in the span of a week. While I do have hope for Vancouver, they're most definitely the underdogs. I know Houston hasn't exactly been lighting it up or anything, but they're usually pretty good with beating weaker teams. If they can beat Toronto and Boston, then there's no reason to believe they couldn't beat a team that was literally formed a week ago. Because Houston has a bigger team with more polished talent and better synergy, I have them winning 3-1. Vancouver is still very new, and in my opinion, it will take some time before they make any meaningful progress. Next up on the list is yet another easygoing game for the Florida Mayhem when they play a lowly Washington Justice. Believe it or not, but I'm going to make this a key match. I have two simple reasons. For one, the Justice have a brand new DPS player making his debut. With Corey off the team, he has some big shoes to fill. The pressure is on. But at the same time, this is a great opportunity to give the Justice fanbase something to be excited about again. My other reason for this being a key match is that Florida has a real chance to earn the top seed in the end of month tournament. They can't afford to choke away this opportunity, especially when it comes against a struggling opponent who doesn't have their two leadership figures anymore. The Mayhem are on a massive winning streak against relatively weak competition, and I have no reason to believe they won't dominate in the same way against Washington, as I believe they will take it 3-0. The Mayhem's superior team gives them the edge over a Washington team that needs to work on finding a new identity for themselves now that their two most popular players are gone. Be on the lookout to see who steps up in Washington's time of need, as well as how their rookie DPS player will perform in his first game. Moving on to the next game, the LA Gladiators take on the Boston Uprising. Just like with the previous game, I'll be making this a key match. Boston may be complete and utter bottom feeders, but we finally get a chance to see what Punk can do at an Overwatch League level. Back when he played for Uprising Academy and North American Contenders, people tended to rate him quite highly. It's also worth mentioning that he has previous experience with Fusions and Color Hex, who he played with on Uprising Academy and Sydney Drop Bears respectively. Perhaps he'll provide a spark that elevates his old friends to play at a higher level. Punk seems like a great fit for a team who desperately needs his help. Even if the end result isn't a good one, this is a solid chance for Punk to leave a good first impression. If he can hold his own against a veteran of the game like Space, then maybe that'll be enough to inspire some confidence and breathe some new life into Boston moving forward. But as excited as I am to see Punk, Boston still is Boston at the end of the day, and the Gladiators desperately need a win to improve their seeding for the upcoming tournament. Until I see some meaningful progress, I am not going to pick Boston to win anytime soon. The Gladiators take it 3-0. While synergy can go a long way, if your opponent completely outclasses you, then it really won't matter much in the end. OG, Space, and Mirror are a far stronger trio. And finally, to conclude Saturday, we get the long-awaited rematch between the Atlanta Reign and San Francisco Shock. This is a key match for sure. The Shock and all their fans have been looking forward to this one for a while now. The day of revenge is finally upon us. You already know that San Francisco will be bringing their A game here. Atlanta are responsible for one of the most embarrassing moments in league history. Now it's time for some payback. The Shock want to return the favor by crushing the Reign in every way imaginable. A win for the Shock would put them in fantastic position to finish in the top 4 of the playoff bracket. Atlanta needs this one as well though. That hiccup against the Valiant puts them in a very unfavorable position, and losing this one as well would make the road to getting some bonus wins all the more difficult. With storylines aside though, these two rosters should be pretty close with one another on paper. Each team has amazing DPS players, reliable tanks, and top tier main supports. However, there are two places where I believe the Shock have Atlanta beat. Those two places are off-tank and flex support. Unlike the previous time, the Reign can't depend on Gator to outplay Choyobin. It's all up to FRD and Hawk this time. While both of them have performed adequately this year, Choi's at a different level, and he's going to be more motivated than ever to redeem himself after not playing well enough in that playoff game. Then at flex support, I personally prefer Violet over Dogman. Neither of them have been spectacular this season, but Violet in my opinion has been more impactful. If the Reign plan to win this game, then their players who are at a disadvantage will need to go above and beyond with their performances. With that said, keep an eye on those two individual matchups. As for who wins this, I gotta go with the Shock in a 3-1 victory. While San Francisco may not have played great against Toronto last week, they truly have been on a hot streak as of late, so I'd honestly be kind of surprised if they dropped this one. I also still don't believe in Atlanta to defeat top tier competition. They have lost every single time, so it would be far too risky to predict them to beat the Shock. Until they can actually beat high level teams, I will pick them to lose these matchups every single time. Now for Sunday. Game number 1 will be between the Chengdu Hunters and Guangzhou Charge. I don't know what to expect from this rivalry anymore. So far it's played out in a very similar way to last year, and if history repeats itself, then the Charge should be the ones to take the tiebreaker, as both of these guys have taken one game apiece this year. A good way to judge how these two match up is by simply looking at the results from last week. Both of these guys faced the Spitfire, but with very different results. The Hunters got rolled and the Charge won convincingly. If that isn't a sign that the Charge may be playing at a higher level right now, then I don't know what is. I will say though, just like with the Dynasty game, this should be considered a trap game for the Charge. Right now, they have to be feeling pretty good on this 3-game winning streak and all, and the Hunters have been on the downward trend for a while. If the Charge come into this and they fail to show their opponents enough respect, then the Hunters could end up sneaking away with this. The Charge would have to play some sloppy Overwatch for that to happen though, and I don't think it will. After all, they took an L to the Hunters pretty bad last time, so they're definitely motivated to get their revenge. And like I said before, the Charge have been getting some quality wins as of late. Defeating the Dynasty, NYXL, and Spitfire all in a row is something we can't ignore. After some initial struggles to start the year, the Charge are finally starting to come into their own. They are realizing their true potential. Meanwhile, the Hunters are trying to throw stuff out there in hopes that something will eventually stick. But I mean, if someone can have a crazy good performance on the side of Chengdu, then maybe that'll be enough to pull off the upset. I'll be looking for Jinmu and Yveltal to show me something on Sunday. Jinmu has been popping off this season, and if he can assert his dominance over Nero, then who knows what could happen. As for Yveltal, I'm honestly just looking for him to show me improvement. His play this year has been kind of sloppy, especially as of late. His team needs him to come in clutch. If Yveltal can step up his game and not let Chara get ahead of him, who by the way has been playing really good lately, then the Hunter support line might be able to hold their own. While I'd like to see the Hunters do well, them and the Charge are simply heading in two different directions. I do not see a world where the Hunters are able to win this. My prediction is that the Charge fend off the insanity and win 3-1. The Hunters seem pretty unsure of themselves right now, and they can't seem to properly execute, well, anything, and I fully expect the Charge to use this weakness to their advantage. The London Spitfire versus the Hangzhou Spark. Now this is a game that catches my interest. A struggling Spark team versus a young London roster on the rise. The stage has been set for a potential really solid series. Each of them have a tough game on Saturday that they realistically won't be able to win. So my guess is that the two of them prioritize their preparation for this game since it's a lot more winnable. I kind of have this gut feeling that these two will push each other to their limits. Besides the game planning, the Spitfire don't do too bad matchup wise. In all honesty, I kind of prefer their DPS this year. Glister, although, and Shui make for a nice rotation. Between Glister being ridiculous and the Spark DPS underperforming at times, I give the edge to London in that regard. But unfortunately, they appear to fall short in other places. Take main tank for example. JMac may be showing steady progress over time, but Gushue is a veteran of the game. It will be difficult for JMac to have his way against him. Places like off tank and flex support are a bit closer though, so for me it really comes down to those other positions. If JMac does well enough, then London should be able to win, but the same can be argued for the Spark DPS. If they perform how they did in the Seoul game, then the Spark should be the frontrunners to win. It's a giant battle of what ifs. But you know me, in a lot of cases, I prefer experience in these types of situations, and the Spark simply have more of it. That's why I have them winning 3-2. Hangzhou have been a team for longer now. They know what it takes to win these types of games. London, on the other hand, still has a long way to go. So I'm going to play it safe and pick the Spark while also predicting Gushue to dominate JMac. Moving on to the 3 games in America, we start with the Dallas Fuel versus the Paris Eternal. I get this feeling this game might be sneaky good, so I want to highlight it as a key match of the week. Even when they lose, I can't help but feel this Dallas team gets better with every passing week. Like with Paris, they recently gave the Fusion a good match. Their level of coordination and overall confidence continues to be on the upward trend. Note has fully shaken off his early season slump, and the DPS are fragging on a regular basis. This team has the tools required to succeed. Now it's a matter of finally piecing it all together by getting a high-quality win. So far, the Fuel have come close on a few different occasions, but they haven't really gotten any noteworthy wins just yet. Here's their chance though. A Paris team that is good but not quite at 100% seems like a good target. But even so, that has not stopped this Paris team from popping off. I learned that the hard way after they made me look like a fool for picking the Gladiators over them last week. They may not have their two Korean superstars available, but these guys are mean and they work like a team. Not to mention that they are very well coached. Even with disadvantages on the table, it's going to take all the Fuel have to win this game. The main question this game comes down to for me is whether or not the DPS can carry hard enough, because Dallas definitely is at a disadvantage in other places. I'll be brutally honest, the Paris support line is flat out better. There's no need to sugarcoat it. Even with a 200 ping warrior at flex support, I still prefer them over Dallas. As for the tanks, on paper the Dallas tank line should be as good, if not better than whoever Paris runs. But to be fair, I said the same thing about the Gladiators last week, and then Nosmite played out of his mind in response. Guangzhou may be well respected, but Nosmite is on the rise. Even though the Dallas tank line has great synergy with one another, that might not be enough to gain the upper hand. The Paris tanks are skilled, and like I was saying earlier, they are very well coached. I get this gut feeling that the Paris coaches know exactly what their tanks need to do to stop Guangzhou and Note right in their tracks, so I'm expecting them to build up a really good game plan. The outcome seems pretty up in the air for this one, but I'm going to stick with my gut and say Paris wins in 5 maps. Paris continuously surpasses my expectations this year, and Dallas has yet to beat a strong team. While I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas pulls this off, I don't fully trust them to beat someone as good as Paris just yet. The Eternal have already shown me they can be one of the best, and Dallas simply hasn't reached that level yet. The Vancouver Titans versus the Philly Fusion. Okay, the result of this one seems very obvious, so I'll be quick about it. The Titans are nowhere near ready to even make the Fusion break a sweat. Expecting a new team to give arguably the #1 team in the league even a smidge of trouble feels unrealistic. Hopefully the Titans do something to at least get the people excited though. Now seems like as good as time as ever. When it's all said and done though, this is in all likelihood a clean sweep in favor of the Fusion. The only hope we have for this game at least kind of being entertaining is if the Fusion were to play Chipsaw. Not to get anybody's hopes up or anything, but this feels like a good time to potentially play him. This is one of the times where I could realistically see him getting the spotlight. Is this likely just wishful thinking on my part? Yeah, probably, but a man can dream. Anyway, to wrap up Week 15 now, the Los Angeles Valiant go up against the Toronto Defiant. For the sake of storylines, plus this potentially being a pretty good game, this will be a key match of the week. Agilities and Kariv get to have an emotional reunion with their former team. They played with KSF, McGravy, and Shax last year, so surely this is going to be a tough moment for all of the people I just named. It's also worth mentioning that these two really need to put themselves in the best possible position to do well in the upcoming tournament. Each of them could really use a bonus win or two, as it could tremendously improve their chances of finishing in the top 12 this year. From a gameplay standpoint, these two are around the same skill level. At main tank, off tank, and main support, they match up very well, and it's a total mystery as to who plays better at those places. Flex support and the DPS line are a bit more interesting though. While Lastro has been playing well this year, Kariv has arguably been better. It's also worth noting that Lastro is facing some potential pressure. He's up against the guy he replaced, and Kariv spoke very highly of him when the Valiant were trying him out. If he crumbles under the pressure, then Kariv might end up vastly outperforming him. Then with DPS, I for one prefer the Valiant's DPS right now. KSP has consistently shown up the entire season, and Shax has come alive these last couple of weeks. Meanwhile, the Toronto DPS are very streaky. Agilities has been having a really rough year, and guys like Logix and Surefour have been on and off. When they're feeling it, they look pretty unstoppable, but when they can't hit their shots, things turn ugly really quickly. While the Toronto DPS very well could have one of their good days this week, I'd rather trust in the players I know for a fact will show up. I've gone back and forth on this one all week, but eventually I decided to go with the Valiant 3-2. My gut feeling is that Lastro goes toe-to-toe with Kariv, while the consistent playmaking ability of the Valiant DPS gives them the upper hand. I will say though, if the Toronto DPS can play at the level we know they're capable of, or somebody like Beast can play much better than Dreamer, then I suspect the scoreline might end up being reversed. Regardless of the outcome, I'm expecting a close and very entertaining game. Well, that pretty much wraps up everything I have to say about my predictions for the week. Now I turn things over to you. What do you think is going to happen this weekend? Let me know down in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, then it would mean a lot to me if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Once you're done with that, consider following me on Twitter, joining my Discord server, or becoming a channel member. And as always, thanks so much for watching today's video. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.